Tenemos un invitado muy especial hoy. Vino Pál, acá desde Hungría, para contarnos un poco del premio Nobel. Tal vez incluso nos puede contar un poco de la situación política actual, que no sé si saben, cambió el gobierno hace poco. Pero bueno, Fran, ¿qué tal? ¿Me puedes contar un poquito de Pál, a ver?
Así es, Pál Czeglédi, discúlpeme si no me pronuncio, es un profesor de la Escuela de Economía y de Negocios de la Universidad de Debrecen, de Hungría. I'm sorry if I mispronounce it again. De que es una de las instituciones más prestigiosas del país. Tiene un doctorado en los mecanismos de la economía de mercado y también colaboró tanto con think tanks europeos como también con el Economic Freedom Network, donde contribuyó a varios informes centrados en la libertad económica del mundo.
Bueno, buenísimo. Y por si no se dieron cuenta con Francisco, a partir de ahora en adelante vamos a tener que realizar la entrevista en inglés. Después veremos si producción hace algo con subtítulos. ¿No? ¿No? No, bueno, está bien.
No tuvieron la factura, soy por
Después,
eso no quieren.
está bien, es verdad. Bueno, Pál. How are you, Pál?
Hello everyone, I'm very well. I'm very pleased to be here.
Well, thank you very much for coming to this space. Well, if it's no problem for you, we'll head directly with the questions. Okay. Well, proceeding with this interview, for those who may not be familiar with who Joel Mokyr is, can you tell us a bit about who Joel Mokyr is, his career, what did he do for this to be awarded in this Nobel Prize?
So he was given a Nobel Prize last year.
Yeah.
Not alone. Half of the Nobel Prize went to him. Other half of the Nobel Prize went to two other economists. And he was given the Nobel Prize for analyzing sustained economic growth from a historical perspective. So he's an economic historian on the one hand and economist on the other hand. So he wrote a lot of books analyzing mainly Western European economic growth and technological change between, let's say, 1500 and 1800.
Okay, so could you briefly summarize what will be the most valuable contribution that made Joel Mokyr for the economic study, let's say?
Well, no, I cannot really summarize it.
Well,
but, yeah,
or
I would try. Because it's very difficult, because he's not a typical economist who has one big paper. He wrote a lot of books, like 500 pages books, and there is not one single result. But I would say that he pointed out what are the institutional conditions and cultural conditions of technological development.
Yeah.
But I cannot summarize it much more pointedly in one sentence or two, because it's it's economic history. It's not a model. It's not a econometric result.
So it's the analysis. Of
it's a long. It's a traditional economic history.
And I would like to ask you, Professor, there are some studies about how societies create and share useful knowledge, like intangible knowledge.
Yeah.
Why is it that some nations have all of the information available, but still fail to turn into an engine for the industry?
Well, Mokyr says that there are macro inventions and there are big ideas, but there always have been big ideas. So that's not a problem to explain how you come up with big ideas, but how you put into practice and how you make it into sustained technological change. So what's missing is this. What's missed? What was missing? Because he was talking about the past, right? It's slow tinkering and the freedom for tinkering with the macro inventions, refining the macro inventions. So that's this is his key word, is tinkering, that you're experimenting with the ideas, with the big machines, for example, and then you refine it constantly.
Yeah, one of the examples that comes to my mind is Poland post-Soviet era. I think in the past couple 30 years, how it managed to grow so much in the European sector, I believe.
And in which sector?
In the European Union, specifically Poland. Yeah, it's one of the most examples about how they have managed without that many natural resources, but with the intelligence and all the capabilities.
Yeah, but that you mean those countries that are converging, or that?
Maybe, possibly.
Yeah. That's mainly about, he was talking about the core countries, the Western European, most developed countries. Catching up is a little bit different. That's an application of what was invented elsewhere. But there is, the micro-inventions has something to do with that, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah, and I will also highlight, like in his works, that sustained economic growth depends directly on technology, like you mentioned a bit, like to also add to that brief summarize. And why do you think institutions became so important in economics, given the last two Nobel Prize awards are related to institutions?
Mm-hmm. Actually, it goes back to the 1990s, and Douglas North was given the Nobel Prize in 1993, I guess, so that was the first. So institutional economics goes back to the 1990s, but because you always have another why. So okay, technology is one reason for economic growth, but why technology is improving in one country and why is it not improving in another country? So it's a deeper explanation, right? So institutions provide or may provide incentives for come up with new technologies. So that's a deeper level. As compared to traditional models of economic growth, which emphasize technological improvement.
And going back into the interview, you mentioned about a culture for society and how it helps them to achieve technological advancement. Do you believe that good laws create a culture of progress, or does a society need a specific culture first for those laws to actually work?
Well, if I knew the answer for this, I would be given a Nobel Prize maybe. But there is co-evolution. But both are to some. It depends what do you mean by good laws. So,
I mean laws that are capable of incentivizing growth in the private sector.
They could change. There is evidence that market institutions, property rights, all these things, can make people more pro-social, more trusting, more post-materialist and so on, but the other is also true, and Moki emphasizes the other. I think that there was a culture in Europe that created, but also you need some institutions, especially Moki is talking about knowledge and technology, so you need the institutions of science.
So we could say that the government needs to step in the economy, intervene in the economy in order to help it growth, or at least setting the pieces up, right?
Well, it depends. What do you mean by stepping in? Because
like intervening, like not like for example, between a free market and an isolationist state.
Well, the government can step in; it can intervene, but the government also needs incentives. And that's an important point in Mokier, that he emphasized that Europe was special, Western Europe was special because it didn't have big empires. It had small countries, and even not even countries. I think back of Germany or Italy did not exist before the 18th century. So instead of Italy and Germany, there was very small kingdoms and principalities, and they all competed for the smart people. And that was an important point that
before the unification.
Yeah, before the unification. So he's talking about years before 1750. So let's say 1500 to 1750. Right, and at that time there was like hundreds of political units in Europe. So political fragmentation. Usually we think of it as a bad thing, but it was a good thing in Europe because it made the countries, the governments, compete. Now, if you don't like it here, you can move to another principality where they speak German, right? Everything is the same. It's just the government that's different.
Yeah.
So if you are overtaxed here, you can just move to another.
Yeah, and bringing this to Latin America, thinking in those years, the position it was Argentina, or in that moment, or even Latin America as a whole, we couldn't even compete at that level with Europe, or there is a gap in history, well, logically. So here in Argentina, maybe we are like a step behind in those terms, I would say. And well, my companions have some questions about that.
It's kind of the way. I want to ask you, what do you think is the most important lesson that a developing country should take away from the idea that institutions matter to the growth of the economy?
So what is the most important for a developing economy?
Yes.
again, I would be very rich if I knew the answer.
All of us.
But I think it's that economic freedom matters. So it's so government intervention usually doesn't work, right? Even if you know how you would be able to intervene, and it is nice on paper, it's nice in the textbook, but government also have incentives. So I think that a developing country needs even more markets than a developed one.
Mm.
Yeah, it's more like trying to understand the role of the state and institutions and interventions.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Well, further questions?
You can go on.
Okay.
I
About the Nobel Prize, institutions.
No, I listened to Francisco that said that you work for the Economic Freedom Index, you had some.
Well, it's not economic freedom index is an index that they develop in a Canadian institute. We are constructing an index of beliefs about economic freedom.
Okay. They are always, the president of the United States is always talking about China.
Yeah.
And I always thought that, I don't know, maybe why China is always so low in the Economic Freedom Index. I don't know if you...
Well, it's not so low.
No?
No. China is
It's better than Argentina.
It's a communist country, and actually, when it comes to beliefs, China is quite high.
Okay.
Yeah, culture-wise.
And even if it's when it comes to institutions, it's not that. It increased a lot, so it's a communist country in name, but in practice it isn't.
Okay.
So it's a kind of market economy, not as developed as the U.S. or other Western European countries, but it's a market economy.
Yeah, there's more freedom, like in markets competition in China. It's more like a cultural thing, like this communist way name, like you're talking about. Well, thank you very much, my colleagues. And for last question, like for the public, that to tell a bit, to speak about a bit. Sorry, there was in April this change of the political party there in Hungary. Like, I won't ask for an opinion or something like that, but I will ask, what does it mean? Like the political party is no more like Russia-sided, and right now it's like European Union-sided. Like, what does this mean for the country?
Well, first of all, I am a little bit surprised that you are interested in the Hungarian elections. It's so far away country, so small country. But I can talk about it as a simple voter, right? And what I can say is that foreign policy played some role in the election. So it was an election only. So, but it was an important election because the government has been in power for 16 years, and now they are voted out with a landslide. And because people are very dissatisfied, especially young people.
I think Viktor Orban visited Milei twice.
Yeah, Milei visited Hungary. I didn't understand. I never understood why. I
don't think
because
we do.
if you look at their policies, they are not. What I know about Milei is a kind of libertarian.
He's
guy,
a classic
right?
libertarian.
Yeah, but Orban is not at all. He introduced price controls. He introduced special taxes on this and that, and he is very, he has no problem with regulating everything. So he's absolutely not liberal, even in an economic sense. And politically, he's been pro-Russian in the last 16 years, and that was one important, I think, factor why young people voted against him, because they were just fed up with being seen in Europe like a Russian puppet state, and that was very inconvenient, right? So wherever you go, and I was asked about why are we, why are we pro-Russian and blah blah blah, and that was I think for young people who know the world outside, who have foreign friends and so on, they knew this, and they were. I'm not saying this was the most important factor, but that was one of the factors. And answering your question, I think that will be a change, right? There will be a change because that was an important point everybody emphasized. But we will see, because one important factor of this is that much of Hungarian energy is coming from Russia. So oil and gas is coming from Russia, and the Russian president uses this as a weapon against many countries. So it's not that easy that you change course, because it has a price.
Yeah,
it might have a price.
Even for countries in the European Union was that also like a topic. Like Russia was a great provider of natural energy or gas or some resources. I can think. I can like imagine it for like also Hungary that will be such a topic, and it could create a great economic impact. Like if the European Union doesn't take part in it, well, we'll see.
Yeah,
we'll know about in a few years. Well, further questions, my colleagues? Well, thank you very much, Pál, for coming here, for telling us about all the progress of Joel Mokir, and to tell us about a bit of the political situation there in Hungary. Well,
thank you
very much,
for inviting me.
Well, ahora, siguiendo en español, bueno, recuerden que esto es Excelente, donde la economía está siempre en el foco, y vamos a dejarles este tema mientras pasamos al próximo bloque.